This isn't the first time I've been asked, why do you care? You don't live here, or you're not white. But the point is, America is global hegemon. So you do have locus standi to complain about its policies, whether or not you live in America or even in the West. I say these things because I understand foreign policy, and I suppose people on the TLC don't. I've just come from Luke Thompson's channel. So he's doing things slightly differently. He goes straight into a conversation with Jess Purvians, but unfortunately, he's another Spurg. And talking about Spurgs, I get the impression that the person who asked me this question didn't like the way I dealt with the Spurg yesterday. And I think he's a Spurg himself. But then I have been accused of being a Spurg. So what is being a Spurg? It really means being a bore, not getting social cues when people are bored with you. Well, sometimes you have to carry on even though people are bored because you have to make a point. But there are people who just don't get it, and you know they're trying hard, and even though you give, quite strong signals about their behaviour and their conversational style, they don't get it. So yesterday, this woman was, well, you should listen to the first 2 hours of the stream, and then you'll know how annoying it was. And I will say it wasn't just that I had to put up with. She was already overflowing in a previous stream that I was on with her on Chris Howard's stream, and it leads me to think, what's wrong with these people? Are they self-selecting in how they seem to congregate at TLC? I have been accused of being neurodivergent, so I'm not going to pretend that I am sweetness and light and charm and social graces. But I think people kind of know my shtick, and that's all that can be hoped for at this stage. People know I want to talk politics, psychology, history, philosophy, theology. People know what I want to talk about, and those who know me know how I go about my business, and they can just avoid me because they're bored with the subject, or come up and argue with me. And there are people who can't quite decide. But it's interesting that certain people that I thought was um, quite positive towards me didn't like the way I kicked off Dot. And I think it's also because they're neurodivergent, and um, I suppose they might think, there, but for the grace of God go I. I could have been kicked too. And perhaps you might. It's not a big deal, is it, being kicked off a stream because you're being a bore and the streamer just couldn't be bothered to, explain the rules to you again. But I think most people they sort of know when to slow down, when to hurry up, when to speak, when to shut up, and not interpret every conversational gap as a cue to monologue incessantly or perform or tell a story or say whatever comes into their minds. We don't want a stream which is a stream of consciousness. We want meaningful conversations that get somewhere, and you don't have to agree with somebody to have a conversation with them. You can just, well, even make a list of the things you don't agree on or do agree on and make it coherent for the passing listener. But I think part of the problem is that many people are only children, and being only children, they are never, probably never told to shut up. And so they go on and on until somebody else tells them to shut up. Perhaps even the parent himself or herself has limits. And and you know that some of these people try. They do go quiet, but then when you let them speak again, they have a whole list of things. They've been taking notes, and they expect the same amount of time allocated to them when the same amount of time that they have been forced to be silent. They think it's their time to plunge in to some story or some performative um, position about something or other. And I suppose the TLC may be a place for people who are neurodivergent because they actually haven't got friends in real life. And that's why TLC is so important to them. While people like me, we want to use TLC for our own particular reasons. And then we get impatient. But sometimes you listen to certain conversational styles after being accustomed to something different, and it can be discombobulating because you're suddenly not used to it, and you feel uncomfortable, and you want well, one of the people in the stream to conform to what you think is appropriate. But what is appropriate anyway? I'd be quite happy to give give classes in conversational styles and correct people, and also be corrected. I think it would be fun because I think very few people, I mean, obviously a lot of people are having problems about it. Perhaps I could sell my course, a series of courses in conversational. It should be something that is alliterative, I suppose. Conversational qualifications to take part in my stream without being abruptly removed. And subtle signals that may be received and not acted on, or not received at all, or received and acted on but not adequately. So I have a oh, it was in the previous stream when I was talking about spurgs, and obviously this is a problem, and it's not only men who can be spurgs, and it really is quite alarming how many spurgs there are, and maybe that's why they gravitate towards Paul Vanderklay and want to be in his TLC because they feel safe and people are, more forgiving there than anywhere else. And he does occasionally take pastoral care of them by dropping in on their streams and then attracting a lot of viewers, and it is a genuine community. But you have people like, well, he always has a different name, and then he questions the motives of the other people in their stream. I mean, the oddest accusation he made today was that Josh and Dot, oh no, sorry, Dot is a creation, an AI creation that Josh bring carries a, what's the word? The Dot is a bit like I guess a pet dog or something that he brings along, and and she is in fact AI, but I don't think so. And when I asked him to explain why Josh would do such a thing, I'm not. Well, there was no explanation. So it was just an accusation, a piece of speculation, and completely unsubstantiated, and which cannot be substantiated. Why would Josh want to do a thing like that? And um, well, I just like Josh because, well, we had a great conversation yesterday. He we like talking about the same kinds of subjects. We don't always have to agree, and I think he's genuine. There are lots of things that need to be dealt with, articulated, and addressed, and he's trying to do that. And he's also got himself into trouble. And that's fine. We all can easily get ourselves into trouble these days with increasing levels of censorship and the increasing nervousness of the matriarchy against its detractors. And to answer the question of Bison, who seems to have taken a great dislike to me, um, why do you concern yourself with the USA in the first place? He asks. I can only point to Yoav Bresler, who said that Israelis try to take an interest, well, try to control American politics in order to control their own. And I think this is the same of everyone. And in fact, this was something I heard a long time ago when I went to this student bar in my youth. And he was talking about American politics, and I asked him, well, why do you take such an intense interest in American politics? And he said, well, they are the ones who control us. And I remember he was Asian, and probably Muslim, and maybe even Afghan. I suppose what is good about the TLC is that because they are microcosm of America, you get a kind of sample of Americans, and it seems they are, or even Westerners, and it seems they are mostly neurodivergent, which is a polite way of saying spurg. Spurgs and oddballs and cranks and people who can't keep it inside because they don't want to, and I suppose they have the instinct that the more they talk, the more likely it is that they will solve their problems. And who is to say they are incorrect in this regard? I see I have two viewers. You're very welcome to join if you'd like to. I think I've said it all about people whose social graces are less than ideal, whose powers of expression are less than ideal. But why do they do it? I've I've just sort of had a had a listen to Luke Thompson's stream, and he's been talking to Jess Purviance and the Bosbergs, so you won't really get much meaning out of them. But it's companionable, I suppose. You get birds. I mean, how much do you think they understand of each other? They probably all sit on a branch and they sing to each other, and it's just a vibe, isn't it? It's just a vibe. No, these birds probably can't do anything about their housing, the weather, um, their food supply, or the problems of predators. But they're just hanging out and they're making noises at each other, and that's what these men are, these neurodivergent men who don't get it. And I suppose we double down, the more we are told not to do it, the more we want to do it. The more we are told that nothing much will change, it's all words. We feel that eventually, if we talk enough, we will find this formula, this form of words that will give us our answer. And of course, we must try to state the problem correctly, and we don't know if we are, and that is why we go from place to place, tree to tree, branch to branch to find out if there are other people who agree with us. And sometimes we find to our surprise that the people we expect to agree with us and be cooperative are in fact hostile and even betray us for probably reasons of ego and ambition, or perhaps genuine misunderstanding, or um, an unfair or mistaken perception of our status and entitlement to voice our opinions, or the validity or the soundness of our arguments. But you would have thought that people who have strong convictions would want to challenge yours if you have strong convictions. And I think the problem is that they don't have strong convictions. They just don't want their lack of conviction to be exposed. I think really that's the problem. And their desire to mask their inability to defend their principles is to do with ego and status. And perhaps eventually these concerns might fade away and a better motivation replace selfish considerations. I suppose that the really more disappointing people are not, spurgs that annoy me, but really, people with a bigger YouTube channel who are in fact able to understand what I'm saying and probably agree with it. But they do not want for their own reasons to be seen to be supporting me or engaging with me. But I think the time for engaging with me is getting closer. So I would say the worse things get, the more likely they are to listen to what I'm saying. Because I really do want to solve the problem and I really do think that I have the solution. And I really would be happy to have my position challenged. And I am concerned that nobody wants to do this, to undergo this exercise. So if you think I'm stupid and wrong, then come up with those arguments instead of just muttering about that to yourself. But then, if the real reason for this lack of engagement is because they think they've already lost, then I suppose I've won. But who really wins? In the end, I like to think that if God exists to reward good and punish evil, good will triumph over evil. And the hypocrites will be punished, as well as the people who, I was going to say pretend not to understand, but it would be the hypocrites who pretend not to understand. So, in short, there are people with very poor powers of understanding and expression who, who don't want to be reminded that they have very poor powers of expression and understanding, and they also don't want to do anything about their ruling classes and their political system. And I suppose they swing from wanting the problem to be fixed and not wishing for me to be successful where they have failed. All I'm doing is, as a political philosopher, pointing to the problem and maybe articulating the problem better than most people. And maybe the problem is that I'm too successful because I'm saying what the problem is and people don't want to hear it because They don't want the problem to be the problem. They prefer scapegoats. So ultimately, we are back to the problem of psychology. So I have to work out why the people whom I would have expected to agree with me if they understood what I was saying, and I think I've been pretty clear, why they lie to themselves, why they pretend not to understand, why they ignore truth. And of course, it's because they are corrupt and they wish to ignore their moral imperative. What is a moral imperative? Well, the innate sense of what they know is logical and true. They just don't want to do it because they're not sure that they're going to be rewarded for doing the right thing, when it seems more profitable to do the wrong thing, or safer to not mention the subject at all. What is a subject that I wish to be discussed? It's only the M word, the matriarchy. I'm saying it's a problem if it exists. The matriarchy is malign, and to live in one means that you are living in a declining empire and a degenerate society. And of course, these are not nice things to admit to yourself. So you deny it. And if you deny it, it means you don't have to do anything about it. And as for the Spurgs, well, what can they do anyway? They have no social skills. They can't even explain their own ideas properly. And yes, I guess Paul Vanderklay is only performing his pastoral role by being nice to everyone and keeping the flotilla together. But I think Paul Vanderklay has ambitions. And I don't think Paul Vanderklay really believes in God. I say that because of the heresies that he utters, such as calling anyone a rando, such as talking about God number one and God number two, and already saying in one of his dreams that church is a business model. And this has been a very valuable revelation to me about how things are run in America. Americans they don't really take their religion seriously. But then, when do they ever do that? It's only a cultural affiliation. But when we talk about cultural affiliations, it's an abstract term that won't make sense to people who are not educated. We have cultural affiliations and we have political affiliations and religious affiliations. And I'm saying the problem is with America not having an official moral system. And of course, my problem is that nobody wants to discuss what an official moral system is. Perhaps Josh might be interested in so doing. I guess out of all the people I'm talking to, he might be the one most prepared to discuss it. And I think that's important because, well, even if you can't solve the problem, you have at least articulated it, and therefore you will feel better. Mao has been known to say that to investigate a problem is to solve it. And I must say, I rather like that because it just means that intellectuals can just think and magically they will have the problem solved. But there are all these stages you have to, well, first you have to diagnose a problem correctly and express it correctly, and then get people to do things properly, and many's the slip between the cup and the lip. And when you think of so many, you know, how many problems there are, I'm reminded of Ren Cobb, who actually didn't understand, even though she's an academic, that there's a difference between crying over spilt milk and actually doing something to clean it up. And I am again reminded that patriarchy, because of its hierarchy, is all important. All I'm doing is going round and round in circles with low status people with no connections who are probably mentally ill or learning disabled, and obviously they also lack connections. But if I try to approach people who have any kind of status, they are actually terrified of discussing what I want to discuss because they fear losing their status. And this would be the middle class people that might already have jobs in academia. And this really highlights the problem of hypocrisy, who are hellbound according to the Quran. Do you think it might be a bit harsh to send them to hell? I don't actually think so, because there's something rather worse if you know what the problem is and you deny it than if you genuinely didn't know what the problem is, and it's just that you're a bit stupid and you're ignorant. So I remember a an Islamic scholar, and his name is Hamza Wald Makbul, and he was talking about the coastal elites and the redneck and the Islamophobic rednecks, and they're two kinds, right? They're the snobbish coastal elites who look down on immigrants and their brown skin, and then there are the rednecks who've been made to believe what they believe. As they tend to be white nationalists. They hate and they fear, and Makbul was saying the rednecks are easier to deal with because they are, honestly mistaken. They are genuinely um, getting the wrong end of the stick. But the West Coast elites, they would they would have been to university, they would have been to grad school, and they would be better practiced at dancing around words and pretending that they don't know what you're saying or deliberately distorting what you're saying. And I think we've got somebody resembling that. Skyworks, he's here. And he asks, how do you think your political philosophy is getting across? Do you have do you have many that agree with you and consider it the most appropriate form of governance? Well, obviously I don't, but I think Muslims should, in theory, agree with me. I mean, they will say, oh, but she's not even Muslim and she doesn't even read Arabic. But, my thing is closer to their thing. Not that they even believe in their thing, right? Or, as far as the Islamic scholars are concerned, they would think, well, we don't want her to succeed when, our trad form of Islam is going to be rejected. So my problem is really getting through to people like Tucker Carlson, because he would actually engage and ask, the questions that I expect and hope for, or Ann Coulter, or they don't even have to be supportive. They can be hostile and ask those questions. But yes, it is the non-engagement that is obstructing my path to glory. But then I've known years ago that it's a standard liberal tactic. If you never fight, you will never lose. So that's what they're doing, really. Now, Paul Van der Clay, um, I think he's just happy, sitting there and saying stuff. I know a lot of people don't think they're great debaters, so they don't want to be seen to be losing the debate, and therefore they won't engage in it. And I understand. I understand this is, self protection, but I'm also saying that there should be somebody who genuinely wants to know what the problem is and what the solution is, and if he's not sure, he would be prepared to talk about it, or put me in touch with somebody prepared to talk about it. And I don't think these are um, big asks, as I say. I'm not asking for, the moon and the sun to be handed to me. I'm just saying, if you did care, you would engage, you would have a dialogue. You wouldn't just be spurging or talking about irrelevant things. But you can see with the TLC, they just want to stay in the echo chamber. And I know that social media platforms are, in fact, a hotel complex of echo chambers. And that's what most insecure people of mediocre intellect would want. So why am I having problems with getting into? I mean, Ann Coulter would be perfect. I mean, I know she's marginalised, but perhaps I should make more of a point of, getting through to her, because she's actually legally trained, so she would be ideal. But I guess everybody has their own little idea, and fundamentally, they don't think that things are bad enough that they have to talk to me. Right? That is what they really think, that things aren't that bad. So I guess I just have to wait until they get that bad. Well, thank you. Thank you for thinking I'm worthy of Tucker Carlson, Skywords. I'm just wondering how best to arrange it. I mean, I can't just say, "Hey, Tucker, have you considered having me on your show?" So I will have to do it in a less direct way, and obviously hope that those of you who want to see me on Tucker might say, "Well, could you just investigate the soundness of the supposed solution of this woman who thinks she has all the answers. I mean, you could do that if you wanted, because it just if I just landed on his doormat and said, "Hey, Tucker, why don't you interview me?" It wouldn't be so good. I mean, yes, I suppose I need an agent or some third party. Well, okay, well, I'll make more of a concerted effort to um, think of getting on Tucker Carlson. I'll have a think about it. I mean, I suppose I just assumed that I would have to, go past PVK before I go to Tucker, but I don't think PVK will talk to me because, I mean, he's not prepared to change his mind. I mean, he's one of those these coastal elites who they're just not going to change their minds, right? This is a conclusion I've come to. And what they want to be true is actually their sacred religion. Yeah, so I have to think about what kind of emails I'm going to send and who to. I'll yeah, I'll have a